are celebrating the Solar Festival of Cancer, which will take place, depending on what part of the world you live in, July 1st and 2nd. So this morning I'm going to talk first about the energies of Cancer, and then that will be followed by our meditation. The first thing I'd like you to think about is this. And the reason is because some of the information in the talk this morning is very condensed and abstract. A lot of it is excerpted from one of Torquem Saradarian's lectures. Okay, so let's do this. Think about this great being in the universe that we call the planetary Lord. And this planetary Lord has a huge university. This university has various campuses. What I'll be talking about in the first part of the talk this morning are the campuses Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer. As you listen to this information, in order to make it active and real, and not just words, that go into your computer brain and say, okay, I know all about it. Make it come alive. Make it be organic, so that when you learn about this campus of Aries, all the mechanics, the creative activity that is going on with the leadership that is part of the campus of Aries, or the instructors that are part of the campus of Aries. And then learn how these campuses all work together in a very cooperative, collaborative manner. But they also each have their specific jobs to do. And what I'm sharing this morning is basically an introduction to the work of each of these campuses. And I'm only going to be talking about the first four: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and then we'll spend the rest of our time talking about the constellation of Cancer. The first thing to understand about Cancer, and this is really important. Now again, think about this is a university campus and the work that's going on, in the constellation of Cancer, that it brings abstract blueprints into reality. Abstract blueprints into reality. So the proper question would be, what kind of blueprints are we talking about, and where do they come from? Well, they're coming from the other campuses. Okay? Okay. The four signs in the zodiac, or let's say these four signs that are making up some of the university campuses of the planetary lords, transmit blueprints that are built in the higher mental plane. From the higher mental plane, these blueprints are coming into manifestation through the campus of Cancer. Blueprints would be understood as prototypes. These prototypes exist in the cosmic mental plane, not the mental plane of the cosmic physical plane, but the cosmic mental plane. So you can imagine the fire and the intensity that goes into the creation of these blueprints on that level, of life, a level that we read about, but our imagination, is very limited. That's why I'm trying to create an active picture for you this morning, so that it becomes a reality to you, and not just mundane or exoteric astrology. Now, The constellation of Aries takes the archetype or the blueprint and builds this archetype or blueprint in the mental plane and then the question is going to be, what mental plane are we talking about? See, now we're learning about the whole stratosphere of what's going on in the universe. See, you know, like Richard was reading this morning, that really it's the physical body, the physical form that has finally reached perfection. So we're talking way beyond the emotional plane that is only 30% built and 10% use it correctly, and so on and so forth. So we're going really out into the stratosphere. But we need to begin to shape our consciousness, in other words, our thinking, in such a way that we begin to include these ideas and thoughts, you know, in our life experience. So it's a solar mental plane. The constellation of Aries takes the blueprint and brings it into the solar mental plane. So we've gone from the cosmic mental plane, now the process coming into manifestation. And Aries brings it into the solar mental plane. All those beings and lives and fiery energies that are taking place, you know, from the cosmic mental plane into the solar mental plane are taking place through the constellation or the campus of Aries, and condenses them as a thought form. Condenses these ideas into a thought form, the blueprint coming from the cosmic mental plane. After this work is done, the constellation of Taurus now takes on the mental form and gives it an emotional form. Taurus charges the form with emotions, this thought form we're talking about, making it more complete, more complete, more complete as this energy comes into a thought form, goes into the solar mental plane. Then now we have Taurus taking it from the solar mental plane into the astral plane and making it more complete with feelings and sensitivity. Taurus builds an astral mechanism. Now don't think astral plane, we're thinking higher planes that eventually are manifesting and taking form into the physical plane, the cosmic physical plane. So Taurus is building an astral mechanism and puts the form in contact with a different frequency. You see how they're working together? It's like each campus of the zodiac, of the planetary logos, it's really active, really busy. Now we come to Gemini. So we've done Aries, we've done Taurus, now we're doing Gemini. And Gemini, what is the job of the Gemini campus? It is to build the etheric counterpart of the form. The etheric counterpart of the form. It is in Gemini that the centers of the etheric body are located in the etheric body. So these senses, all of these major seven centers or senses or seven centers now take formulation and are manifested as centers in the etheric body. The etheric centers are located in the etheric plane like blueprints. The etheric body puts the person or any other form in contact with the whole universe. So it is my hope that you're broadening your understanding and consciousness about what the etheric plane is. and the power of the etheric body. The etheric body of any form puts that form in contact with the universal etheric body. So most of us have studied and read about the etheric body, and most people think the etheric body is the health body. But it's so much more than that. So much more than that. If all these centers in your etheric body are active and without obstruction, the energy coming from the etheric plane of the universe is now pouring into you and through your work. Actually, we're living in one ocean of energy. If we develop our etheric centers, we will be able to contact everything that exists on this planet. That's a pretty amazing statement. One becomes all-knowing and all-present through your etheric body. Now, Cancer. This is the fourth campus. Cancer brings the form into objectification, or into materialization, or into manifestation. Now, you see how they're all working together? You can't have just one campus dangling out there in the universe saying, I'm it. You know, I'm the end-all, be-all of life. If that's the case, it would be like, what could we compare it to in our own reality? I can't even think of it. Let's see. I am the only one that exists in the universe, so you better pay attention to me. I'm hot stuff. But you're only one little seed, one little spark, one little idea. You're not even a campus yet. The human being is matter. That's each of us. We are matter, but we are more than that, depending on the level of our illumination, depending on the level of our consciousness. But essentially at this point, most human beings are not only matter, but also have an etheric body, have an astral body, and have mental substance. The problem is these substances are not yet complete. They're not yet developed. The other bodies, this is very important to think about, the other bodies that a person can develop are not given to him. They are not given to him. The Buddhic, Atmic, Monadic, and even higher planes do not belong to it. That may come as a surprise to you. So if they don't belong to us, you know, who do they belong to? The solar angel. The solar angel leaves these coats or robes to the person, and the person may use them if he has built the proper mechanism to come in contact with these higher energies. So when a person says, well, I'm functioning in my Buddhic body now, that means he is at least, he has a consciousness at least of the 3rd degree initiation, and that means that the lower, or that first stage of the Antakarana bridge, that bridge of communication is completed and is now working on the next higher stages. In working on these next higher stages, this person is in total contact with their solar angel. It's no longer imagination. It's no longer sporadic. It's no longer because I know about the solar angel, then, you know, the solar angel and I are best friends. This is the hidden work of the sign of Cancer. Cancer brings the light that was imprisoned into the form, into materialization. So that's the job of Cancer. If your sun sign or your rising sign is in Cancer, but particularly your sun sign, and this is why your sun sign, there is a handful of us, esoteric astrologers, who believe this, and we've practiced astrology enough to know it's very valid. That when, let's say in this case, you come in with your sun in Cancer, not your rising sign, it's your sun sign where you have the greatest obstacles. Most people think, your mundane exoteric astrologers think that if your sun is in Cancer, your sun is in Gemini, or your sun is in Aquarius, then you're in full blossom of that expression, but it's not true. It's your rising sign that is in a more powerful level of illumination than your sun sign. Interesting, huh? Okay. So again, Cancer brings the light that was imprisoned in the form into materialization. So this is it's like the spiritual 101 for all disciples on the path who are born in this sign, but more particularly aspirants, to begin to learn how to bring that light from their soul into manifestation. Then lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, depending on the intensity of their life. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. It's very interesting to think about, and boy, am I going to go over this morning, but there is so much to share. I hope you'll have time, particularly if you're trapped here. But if you're on the webinar, you can turn us off. Okay. So I interrupted myself. Where the heck was I? So we can go from one lifetime to another, to another, to another, unless we are on this path of fiery, which is called going through the narrow door versus the door that's very wide. And I'm going to give you a quote in a few minutes about what that means. If you are going through this narrow portal, then you'll only be a Cancer or an Aries or a Taurus or a Gemini one lifetime, and you will have perfected it. Now, with Cancer, there is a friction, fire by friction it's called, with the friction of the physical and various other forces that Cancer begins to awaken, this Cancer person. When this person awakens and it wants to build another kind of mechanism, it's because the soul has this innate knowing that there is something greater than their personality. This is why the motto of Cancer is, or the keynote of Cancer is, I build a lighted house, and therein dwell. For many millions of ages, the form suffers because within the form, the spark is imprisoned. The spark eventually tries to balance itself, and it becomes half spirit and half matter. The inner spirit in the form wants to advance, sublimate, and transform itself. And guess what campus is busy helping that happen? Think about it. If you're in astrology, you're going to know it just like that. Balance. Libra. No, I didn't. Libra brings the balance. Capricorn is a much less populated campus. Libra takes over and makes the person half spirit and half matter. This is the most dangerous moment in a person's evolution. Now, if you've heard me talk in the past, you know we've talked about it in a very exoteric way, that Libras can be really tough to deal with because they just never seem to make a decision. But there is a cause, underlying cause behind that, which is every decision they make is either going to push them forward, or vertically up the ladder, or it is going to increase their karma and anchor their time on earth, prolong it unnecessarily. So somewhere innately that Libra person knows that they had better be careful with all their decisions, little or big. Libra finds the balance between spirit and matter. So we could call spirit and matter two poles, the balance between these two poles. In Scorpio, the campus of Scorpio, the person decides what? To be a disciple. And why is that? It's very simple. Because he can't stand the fluctuation anymore. In Scorpio, the person awakens and dedicates himself to light, to beauty, goodness, and truth. He decides to serve, or she decides to serve other human beings and to be creative and beautiful. Eventually, this person develops a strong character of discipleship. Discipleship means to have a very high goal and eventually to offer yourself, your physical, emotional, and mental nature to that goal in order to make that goal a reality in your life. Another word for goal would be a vision. And that vision becomes so electrified that it's like just the total fabric of who you are. You can't get away from it any longer. Oh, I can't go there. You should be part of my consciousness right now. There's such a download taking place. I could write a book. But we only have 15 minutes left. So let me speed up a little bit here. When Scorpio, when you unite with that vision, and when Scorpio finishes his job, and the disciple comes into being, this is going to take place if he has been tested for centuries. This means Scorpio, rising Scorpio sun sign, has moved on to the reverse wheel. Onto the reverse wheel. And I read my zodiac newsletters because through those newsletters I've talked about the reverse wheel and what that means. So the Scorpio, if he has been tested for centuries, now the Scorpio changes into an eagle. To be an eagle means that you are no longer interested in the earth. You are elevated and your consciousness is soaring, think of the eagle bird, over the mountains, over the heights. But all the while, you still are grounded here. After you become an eagle, Capricorn, Valerie, Capricorn comes in, the campus of Capricorn. Cancer and Capricorn, as Valerie was pointing out, are polar opposites on the wheel of the zodiac. Now, Capricorn, this is important to think, because this is the narrow door, narrow portal. Capricorn is a door through which the imprisoned spark enters into immortality. Cancer brings forms into humanity, to the earth. Capricorn takes the forms of those who graduated and became eagles to the mountaintop, opens the door and says, "You are finished. Go into the light of the Father's home." These two doors were mentioned by Christ in the New Testament when he said, and I quote, "Enter in through the narrow door, for wide is the door and broad is the road which leads to destruction, and many, many are those who travel on it. Oh, how narrow is the door, and how difficult is the road which leads to life." Let me repeat that. Oh, how narrow is the door, and how difficult is the road which leads to life, and few are those who are found on it. All kingdoms come from that door. The mineral kingdom, vegetable kingdom, animal kingdom, and human kingdom come through this door and incarnate on the physical plane. But going back home, this is a really, really, really important but, so bring your wandering mind back here. But going back home, only human beings can pass through the door of Capricorn. Only human beings can pass through the door of Capricorn. How narrow is this door, and how difficult is the road. But this door leads to life, and few are those who find it. Only 1 in billions is able to enter into initiation. The door of Capricorn opens only at the third initiation. The third initiation means total sublimation of your physical, emotional, and mental nature in the light of your solar angel. At the third initiation, for the first time you have a contact, the first time that you have a contact with your divinity, that divinity within you. It is the first time you can see the purpose behind creation. This is the narrow way. In traveling this narrow way, there are great renunciations. This is why on Sunday mornings we don't have a whole parking lot full of people waiting in line to find a place for their car, or standing in line to fill our sanctuary. They're still in that outer, wide path. Eventually, they will find the narrow path, but it takes time. Why? Renunciations, these are not easy. I think most of us can attest to this fact. The first renunciation we must manifest is the renunciation of our vanities. A vanity, whether it is physical, emotional, or mental, is something that you do not have, but you act as if you have. You want to act as if you have it. Like you think you're a holy person, you think you're a great initiate, you think you are a leader of men and women. But that's a vanity. A vanity, whether it is, I'm repeating this so you understand it, a vanity, whether it is physical, emotional, or mental, is something that you do not have, but you want to act as if you have. To have vanity means that you do not see what you actually are. A person who has many vanities is not walking in the path of reality and facts. what comes to mind is how people will tell others, you know, I'm an old soul. And I just have to laugh hilariously at that, because in fact, to be an old soul means that you have been around and around and around on this path of reincarnation for a long, long, long time. And so you're an old, crusty soul. A person with a vanity has another image about himself that is very artificial, because it is created, this image is created by his or her actions and responses. A vain person builds all his or her life on that unreal image. None of his decisions, plans, or purposes find fulfillment. Why? You know, why is that? It's because our foundation is wrong. Because the foundation is coming from a false personality. In order to make such a person progress, he needs to enter the path that is very narrow. If you're a parent or a grandparent or a godparent and you suffered through those teenage years, that's nothing. Dealing with those teenagers, it's nothing. Can't barely even be compared to what it means to enter into the path that is very narrow. Why is that? Because the narrow path means discipline. The person must subject his physical body, emotional body, and mental body to discipline. It's possible to progress by renouncing certain things, certain emotions, and certain thoughts. So for us, if we see ourselves as an aspirant or see ourselves as a disciple, these renunciations become part of the purpose of our life, you know, in this lifetime. Now comes the big one. In certain critical moments, that disciple must even renounce what he knows and has been. All giants of spirit faced such renouncements in their lives. For example, Tolstoy. Tolstoy was a very rich nobleman and was a famous writer. But one day he suddenly gave away all his property, took his wife, and went to live at the seashore in a very simple house. The teaching tells us that one act of renunciation literally brings tons of magnetism and radioactivity into your system. This is so hard not to elaborate. But I'm going to anyway. Just a little just a little bit here, which is this. If you're on this and you have the courage to put yourself on this very narrow path, you have to have an influence which to most would seem like an imposition of will, but to the enlightened one recognizes this is your teacher. That this teacher, little by little, will come in and push these buttons of vanity and ego. And some lifetime, eventually some lifetime, we're going to stop fighting back and reacting and see that this is a gift. Because we don't want to be an old, crusty soul. The lighted house built during cancer starts with the outer court. The outer court is our personality, our physical, emotional, mental nature. Our job is to make these bodies full of light. What does light mean? It means energy. The only thing that is vital and energetic is the light. It is coming from the sun. What's the next campus that we're going to visit? Leo, the sun, prana. So we'll be talking about this next month. Christ proved this when in the transfiguration of his body, he started to be radioactive. He proved that the body is essentially light and it can be transformed into light. So the real essence of each of us is a drop of light that pushed itself into incarnation by that great power and passed through the constellations of Aries and Taurus and Gemini and Cancer until finally it became imprisoned in form. We must now bring this light into manifestation. So each full moon of Cancer brings more opportunity to make these three bodies light bodies. Christ emphasized this many times when he said, "Let your light shine out. Do not be a muddy person." Now, Christ didn't say that. Okay. We're saying this. Do not be a muddy person. Do not be a harmful, arrogant, argumentative, vain, or separative or destructive person. Let your light shine out. Light is the essence of existence. So in Cancer, we must build our physical house. Eventually, you must achieve a state of reality in which your body is no longer flesh. This is not an hallucination. The bodies of angels and masters are all light. There are no obstacles for the light because light penetrates into everything. Remember, Christ appeared to the disciples after the crucifixion in a room where all the doors and windows were shut and locked. We are equal to the light we shine. We are not equal to our vanity, our ugliness, and showing off. We must fill ourselves with that light and express that light and stand in that light. And so I'm going to stop here. I think I've covered enough. Okay, so we'll have plenty of time for a meditation.